Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, July 15th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game in 46 days, the game against Michigan in 137 days. If you're planning your next event, make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at GratefulGriddleOH.com. Last week, did a show with our buddy Kevin Noon of BuckeyeHuddle.com, talking about some of the most unbreakable records on the offensive side of the ball in Ohio State history. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the defensive side of the ball. We're going to be doing that with our buddy Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. We'll just run through these real quick. I've got 9 for you here, and then Tony and I will just kind of go through and we'll pick which ones we think are maybe the most unbreakable of all. And we're just going to do this in ascending order right now of the numbers involved. So we're going to start with 3, and that is the number of interceptions returned for a touchdown in a season. It's set by Malik Hooker in 2016. Next up, 9 interceptions in a season by Mike Sensabaugh and Craig Cassidy, 22 interceptions in a career by Mike Sensabaugh, 29 tackles in a game by Chris Spielman and Tom Cousineau. This is the one that I knew was going to be on that list because it's a record that you always hear about and not going to happen again. Next up, 36, that is the number of sacks in a career by Mike Vrabel. 49, that's the tackle for loss yardage in a single game by Tim Sawicki in 1979. 66 tackles for loss in a career by Mike Vrabel, 211 tackles in a season by Tom Cousineau, and finally 572, that is the number of tackles in a career by linebacker Marcus Marek. So, all right, Tony, I will let Your Honor have the honor. Which one of those records is the most unbreakable?
These are all very, very good. And really, there's probably like 7 that are unbreakable and 2 that are breakable mostly by fluke. But, I could make an argument that 9 interceptions is very, very close to being unbreakable. But Malik Hooker did get close, close-ish to tying it with 7. There are some of these that are just your players aren't around long enough anymore. You're going to be like 572 tackles. I'll say is you're talking 150 tackles a season for 4 years, basically. And if you have if your freshman season you have 150 tackles, there's a pretty good chance you're not going to have a senior season of 150 tackles because you're going to be in the NFL. So that's one, like 211 tackles. I'm just going to, I don't mean to go through all of these, Tom, because I
didn't say you got the first 4 picks, Tony. I said you got the first pick.
Okay, so I will go with this one. Picking the most unbreakable defensive record, I would say I'm going to go 572 tackles in a career. I just don't think there's enough of them anymore. Enough seasons anymore for somebody that could do that.
Yeah, I think that is the correct answer because you've got several things working against you. One is the game is different and you don't see people picking up 20 tackles, 25 tackles a game. Like that just doesn't happen. And then if someone does do that, they're sure as heck not playing 4 seasons at the college level. So 572 tackles, just to sort of put this in perspective, if you were a 3-year starter and you played 14 games each season, so you figure, maybe you make the national championship one year, maybe you don't the next year, whatever it is. So 14 games a season over 3 years as a starter, you would have to average 13.6 tackles per game across each of those 42 games to reach Marek's total. Last year, Ohio State's leading tackler was Cody Simon. He averaged 7.46 tackles per game. So 6 tackles short as the leading tackler of Ohio State. And then you have to do that every game for 3 years. That feels like probably not. No, you're not going to get there. One of the things that kind of leads into that is the fact that there's just fewer tackles. The game is different. There's fewer plays. You're not running the fullback up the middle 30 times a game, so your Mike linebacker isn't getting 30 tackles. I mean, I remember when Tuff Borland was the middle linebacker for Ohio State when Army came to town in 2017, something like that, and he had 13 or 14 tackles, whatever it was, because they're just running the A-back up the, right up the middle and right into Tuff Borland over and over and over and over again. And it was like, wow, 13 tackles. That's crazy. Okay, so 29 tackles for Chris Spielman and Tom Cousineau. They both had the record. They share the record. But those are guys who have played for a long time. Those are guys who played in the 70s and 80s. The game has changed quite a bit since then. You don't have that many snaps in a lot of games. On last week's show, we went through that Ohio State had only had one game with more than 73 snaps on offense total last season. So you have to have someone making the tackle on like 40% of the snaps in a game. And that would be probably statistically pretty unlikely. That one to me, I mean, there's several others here that I think are pretty unlikely to get broken. 29 tackles. Only two guys this century for Ohio State, Ryan Shazier and A.J. Hawk, have even gotten to 20, let alone 29, and they both got exactly 20 in those games.
Yeah, and if I recall the Chris Spielman thing, that was against Michigan, and Ohio State just couldn't get off the field. So it's a big stat, but not a great defensive outing for Ohio State. So yeah, that's one where the game is just different. And Tough Borland had 12 tackles in that Army game. I looked it up, 9 solos. So there was a lot of just smash, and that's what the game used to be back then. And now to have any particular player get more than 15, like that's going to be somebody's career high, no matter almost who they are.
Yeah, that feels like a pretty sure bet to not get broken anytime soon. So, all right, I will take the chance of letting you pick one singular, one more next pick before I get another one.
22 interceptions in a career, and it's amazing in the number of interceptions that used to happen, considering the number of throws that were like there. Feels like Mike Sensible had more interceptions in a season than there were actual passes. So how do you intercept 9 passes when there are only 7 passes thrown that season? That's the game was different back then, but to have 22 over a career, again, for as much as there's more throwing, there's a lot more accuracy. And these are professional quarterbacks in most places essentially throwing the ball. Whereas back then, look at some of those old timey photos of like the football cards, and even the quarterbacks. You're like, I don't know that you're supposed to hold the football like that, but you know what? You do you go out there and you complete your 47% of your passes, Broadway Joe, and you go be a Hall of Famer somehow.
Don't get me started on Joe Namath. I have that is one of my longer message board rants at one point about Joe Namath being the single most overrated player in the history of the NFL. That's a whole separate conversation. Maybe we'll do that. Get Jets fans all angry. Be nice for Jets fans to have somebody to be mad about. But yes, 22 interceptions in a career by Mike Sensible, definitely right at the top of the list. I thought about making this my first pick. Sensible is 5 interceptions ahead of second place Fred Burnley. Tony, give me within 2 years, when did Fred Burnley play football at Ohio State? And I will give you a hint, is a defensive back named Fred. So that probably narrows it down to a certain degree.
All right, within 2 years, either way, 1956.
You're very close. I think it was 50 to 52, something like that. You're in the right decade. I'll give you partial credit for that. But yeah, to your point earlier, it is telling that these are guys who played 50 years ago, 70 years ago. The game has changed quite a bit. It's like, I think the record for NCAA interceptions by a single quarterback in a single game, there was a Florida quarterback in like the late 60s, I think, who threw 7 interceptions. Like, walk me through the scenario where a quarterback is allowed to throw 7 interceptions in 2 games without getting pulled. That's probably not going to happen these days. And yeah, the passing game is just much more efficient, much more effective. And if you do have someone who's intercepting that many passes, they're just going to stop throwing in that guy's direction. So yeah, that's the 22 for him. Definitely a good pick, because the last Buckeye to have as many as to even come within 10 career interceptions of the record is Ahmed Plummer, who last played at Ohio State in 1999. He finished with 12. So only 10 shy of the career record, and no one's even gotten that close in this century. So, all right, so that's a good one. That was going to be my next pick. You stole my next pick. So I will go with, how about 36 sacks in a career by Mike Vrabel. He's 5.5 ahead of Chase Young, who played as a true freshman and then put together the single most dominant single season in Ohio State history with 16.5 during his 3rd season. And he finished 5.5 ahead of Chase Young. So Vrabel had the benefit of playing 4 seasons to put up his 36 sacks. If you get to 36 in 3 seasons, or even close to 36 in 3 seasons, you got to basically be a double-digit sack guy for at least 2 and maybe 3 years. walk me through the scenario where a guy is a double-digit sack guy for 2 to 3 years and doesn't leave for the NFL after the third season. That feels pretty unlikely to me. So, you could see someone averaging 12 sacks potentially over a couple seasons, but you're not going to see them play long enough probably to beat this record unless you have a bunch of 15 game seasons in a row, and then maybe, but it would still take a lot.
Yeah, and you're asking somebody to just do what Chase Young did, and that's asking the impossible. He had 3.5 sacks as a true freshman, and maybe if he had played more, and maybe if he wouldn't have been suspended for 2 games against Maryland and Rutgers as a junior, he could have gotten those 5.5 sacks in those 2 games alone. But I mean, you basically have to be Chase Young, and then you still come up short, or at least produce like Chase Young. Nobody's Chase Young. So, like, this one is, well, the way Ohio State is recruiting defensive ends at the moment, maybe we should have started with this one because it's not been going well. But yeah, this requires a perfect storm of a lot of things. So it's like, I think it's possible, but I don't foresee it happening anytime soon because he was just so dominant in 2016. And then even, he won his last 3 games without a sack. So like there's 5 games in there where you got nothing out of him in terms of statistical performance. That could have been him. So it's possible to do it basically in a little over 2 seasons, and 2 seasons as a starter and then as not even a rotational freshman.
All right, we'll let you have one more. Take your last pick, and I'll do one more, and we'll call it a day.
Well, here's one. Maybe this goes right along with it. The 66 tackles for loss in a career, because again, if you're that productive, you're talking about 22 tackles for loss per year for your first 3 years. And if you got 22 tackles for loss as a true freshman, you might be like testing the legal boundaries of what college can do for you any longer. So that one maybe we should have drafted a little bit earlier. So yeah, 66 tackles for loss. Like if for that to be broken at this point, it's just like this workman, like Rob Landers, who is not NFL prototype. He's just a plugger, and somehow nobody can stop him. And he gets 15 tackles for loss, 16 tackles for loss a year over the course of 4 years. And maybe even has that true freshman season of like 4 regular season games and like 3 or 4 postseason games to pad some stats. That doesn't count. But like it would take one of those like 5th year guys of just like, 12 tackles for loss, never really good enough to go pro, but gosh, you love him in the locker room.
Yeah, and you know what he's doing right now? He is a college football coach at Wittenberg. We see him out at the Ohio State camps over the summer. Yes, one of my all-time favorites, Robert Landers, just one of the great characters in Ohio State football, and just he had that scoop and score, was a fumble return against Indiana that I think got called back. That was one of the great shames of college football, that we got denied that great moment. My last one, and I think I'm going to sort of cheat here because no one's tackling 211 people in a season. That's Tom Cousineau's record. Ryan Shazier was the best one since 2000, and he got like 2/3 of the way there. So that's not getting broken. The 9 interceptions in a season, that's going to be pretty hard to break. But man, I got to go with 3 interceptions returned for a touchdown in a season. That's Malik Hooker in 2016. And I know this is one that's not technically unbreakable because you could, you think about the guys who've done it, and you get a bounce and you run it back, and Haskell Garrett has an interception return for a touchdown. Draymond Jones has an interception return for a touchdown. Like you don't have to be you don't have to be Caleb Downs to do this. But here's the context. This is a little like the last one where you look at Jeremiah Smith's true freshman season, and the last 6 first-round draft picks add up their freshman seasons, and it's basically Jeremiah Smith's freshman season. Here's the context here. 3 interceptions returned for a touchdown in a season by Malik Hooker. No player in Ohio State history, other than Malik Hooker, has ever had more than 2 in their career, let alone in a single season. So I don't know. That may be more of a fun fact than a truly unbreakable record, but also I'm not betting on anyone breaking it anytime soon.
And don't forget, he had one called back against Indiana, too. He had a pick 6 against Indiana. That would have been his second of the year, but that got called back. But then he was, I don't know how many of the kids today remember or got to watch him it was incredible to watch him because it was the closest thing to like a Ted Ginn where you're like, I'm just going to hold my breath and see what happens, because he made plays out of, he covered so much ground and you knew something special was going to happen if he was around the ball. And so, yeah, that he had the best individual season in Ohio State defensive history, in my opinion, until Chase Young in 2019.
Yeah, and not a coincidence that those guys have had their names come up a little bit in this show. Who will have one of the best seasons in Ohio State history this year? Well, there's only one way to find out. That's to hang out and watch with us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We're having a lively conversation about this very show topic on our board right now, the Huddle Board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. And of course, plenty more to talk about there, including the upcoming Ohio State season. Will Caleb Downs break some Ohio State records? Only one way to find out. That's to hang out with us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.